I'm just wondering if this counts as cardio or like heavy lifting or something. Hi BookTube, it's Lori from Bookishly Lori. It is 1:30 in the morning and I just watched a YouTube video from Amy Reads and she was doing the TBR tag, and I'm on spring break right now. I really have nothing better to do, so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna film the TBR tag. So let's get into it. Question number 1. How do you keep track of your TBR? Well, if you look behind me, I have my shelves, and I can pretty much just tell, just looking at the books, how many I've read, how many I haven't. But on Goodreads, I do keep a shelf of all the books that I own that I haven't read. I also have a TBR shelf that's just general books that I want to read. Maybe I don't own them, but in general, I just want to read them. But that one has a lot of books on it. Question number 2. Is your TBR print or ebook? My TBR is definitely mostly print. I do have a pretty big audiobook TBR of books that I have saved on the Hoopla app or Overdrive through my library that I would like to listen to on audiobook, but I don't really read a lot of ebooks. Just not something I particularly enjoy. So all of my books that I consider to be on my TBR are books that I physically own that I haven't read yet. Question number 3. How do you determine which book from your TBR to read next? I am a big mood reader, so sometimes it is difficult to decide what book I'm going to read next. I try to sometimes go in order of like books that I've added to my TBR on Goodreads recently, because you can do the like date added and see how long ago you've marked that book want to read, and then when I add it to my physical TBR, I can see, oh, well, I just bought this book, but I've been wanting to read it for a really long time. So I'll try and prioritize it that way, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes I just pick up any random book that I feel like, and that's what I read next. It just kind of goes with my mood. So question number 4, a book that's been on your TBR the longest. The book that I saw was on my TBR the longest is Batman, this one, Nightwalker by Marie Lu, and this is part of the DC Icons series. I believe the first one was Wonder Woman. So I have Batman, I also have Catwoman up there, and then it's Superman. So I got this honestly because I love DC, and Batman, Joker, Harley, Gotham is my favorite. So I'm excited to read this. It's been on my TBR the longest, technically, but according to Goodreads. On my physical TBR, I just bought this book a few weeks ago. So even though it's one of the books I've recently bought, it's been on my TBR for a long time, and I'm excited to get to it. Question number 5, a book that you recently added to your TBR. This is kind of a spoiler for my March book haul, but my March book of the month, actually this is my February book of the month, was Anna Kay by Jenny Lee. This book has just come out, and it's been said that this is if you take the traditional story of Anna Karenina and put it in the setting of Gossip Girl, but in the modern day. So those are all great buzzwords for me. I have never read Anna Karenina, but seen the movie. And I know the story, I'm familiar with it, and I love Gossip Girl. So I am super excited for this. I think it sounds really great, and I love the cover. It just looks like a really cute, fun contemporary for springtime and summertime. So this one I'll be reading for sure soon. Number 6, a book in your TBR strictly because of its beautiful cover. This was my book of the month pick for July. I'm subscribed to Book of the Month YA, by the way, but they're actually switching over to just going back to regular Book of the Month. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully I can still get some YA books, because I had Book of the Month originally, just the regular, and then I switched over to YA, and then they're like, just kidding, we're going back to just regular. So I'm like, okay. But anyway, I had picked up this book, and this is All of Us with Wings by Michelle Ruiz Keel. And I love this cover. This book cover is just absolutely gorgeous. If you look closer, There's details. It's set in San Francisco, which that really attracted me to this book because I love San Francisco. I've never been there, but that's just one of the settings in books that I really enjoy. And I've heard some mixed things about this book since getting it, but I'm still just really excited to read it. It has a lot of magical realism elements. The only thing I've heard is that the romance is a little bit kind of touchy for some people to read about. So if you've read this book, let me know what you think. I'm kind of nervous to go into it, but it has a beautiful cover, and I think some of the elements that are in it I'm interested in, but again, I'm hesitant because of some of the things I've heard about it. Question number 7, a book that you never plan on reading. I didn't really pull a book for this because last year I went through a massive unhaul and I pretty much got rid of any book on my shelf that I felt like I would never actually read. There are some books on my shelf that I think it'll take me a while to want to read or to get through, but there's really no book on my shelf that I don't see myself ever reading. That's my physical shelf. My Goodreads shelf, that's a different story. I mean, I'm adding books on there left and right, and especially like doing different giveaways and stuff, it adds it to your TBR on Goodreads. So that's a different story. I don't know her. That's a different TBR. Alright, so question number 8, what is an unpublished book on your TBR that you're super excited for? I am really excited for The Nobleman's Guide to Scandals and Shipwrecks. I'll put a picture right here. That is the 3rd book coming out in the Montague Siblings series. The first book being A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. The second one being The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. So I'm going to hold up this one just while I talk about it. I absolutely love this series, the Montague Siblings series. I'm not sure if the coming one, The Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks, will be the last one, but if so, this series has been so entertaining. I love this first book. Our main character, Henry Montague, is just hilarious. He's a bicon, truly. Best bicon ever. I love him. He's hilarious. This first book, I just have so many good memories of reading it. I really loved the second book. It wasn't as good as the first one for me, but I'm excited for the 3rd book because if you're not familiar with this series, in this first book we follow Henry Montague, and he is pretty much being disowned from his family because he's just a wild party animal, and his parents are like, I'm sick of you. So we are sending you on your little getaway, kind of like his last hurrah, and get everything out of his system so that he can be, what his parents want him to be. And it doesn't go that way. It does not go according to his parents' plan. It actually goes the complete opposite, and it's hilarious. And in the second book, we follow his sister, Felicity. And in this first book, we see that they have just had a new baby sibling. I don't think Henry even calls him by his name. He calls him like the Thing or something. He hates him. But it turns out that this little sibling that they have is Adrian. And so the 3rd book is all about Adrian, and Henry and Felicity are now adults living their life in, I can't really spoil what happens in the first 2 books, but Adrian is now a teenager and his siblings are adults, and he's going to interact with them for the first time because in this first book, this is not a spoiler, but they don't return home. So I'm really excited to see what goes on in Adrian's book. I'm excited to see Henry and Percy and Felicity again. I'm just really excited. If this is the last book in this series, I think it'll wrap up really nicely. So that's the book that I'm most excited for. Question number 9, a book on your TBR that basically everyone's read but you. Ooh, I've never read any Cassandra Clare books, and I've read Sarah J. Maas. I've read A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. I never got to A Court of Wings and Ruin because I gave up. I didn't like it after that. But I'm still interested in Throne of Glass, so I hesitantly would want to start this series. I have Assassin's Blade as well, But yeah, these two books, definitely everyone's read them. I'm the only one that hasn't, it feels like sometimes. Number 10, a book on your TBR that everyone recommends you. Not so much people have recommended me this, but I feel like this is a classic that everyone has read, and I just haven't yet. And that's The Scarlet Letter. I think this would be a classic that I'd be really interested in, and I would want to kind of analyze it and share my opinions. So it's been sitting on my TBR for a while now. I have the no fear version so that it's a little bit easier to digest and get through. But yeah, I feel like everyone had to read this in high school. I didn't, so I've always wondered about it. So this is one I would like to get to. Number 11, a book on your TBR that you are dying to read. American Royals. I am super excited to read this book. Last year I read Red, White, and Royal Blue, and that was just amazing. I mean, everyone on BookTube loves it, and for good reason. That book really made me want to read more about like politics and royal families, and I watched The Crown on Netflix. I'm like, I'm just like standing royalty right now. So I thought this book had a really interesting premise with, if you're not familiar with it, it's a what if America had never become a democracy, and if George Washington had become a king instead of a president, and that bloodline continued on throughout history to the modern day where we still have American royals. What would happen? So I thought that was super interesting. This seems like a really great book, and I've heard pretty good things about it, so I'm definitely excited to pick this one up. Last question, how many books are on your Goodreads TBR? I think it's more fun to guess and then put the actual number. So I'm going to guess like probably over 1,000. Maybe like 600 to 1,000. That's a really big range, but I add tons of books on my Goodreads TBR, and I think there's some merit and some good things to having a really big TBR on Goodreads and not a really big physical TBR, because if I had a really big physical TBR, I would feel overwhelmed, because I've had one before where I've had over 100 books on my TBR, and for some people that might not be a big deal, but for me it definitely felt overwhelming. So I think it's more manageable for me to have a smaller physical TBR but have a huge like dream TBR of books that I want to read, because there's never going to be a time where I'm like, oh, I'm just out of things to read. I always want to be looking for another book or something else that I can read and add to my shelf. So that was the TBR book tag. I really enjoyed that tag. Let me know down below if you liked one of the books that I showed, or if you're excited to read one of those books. And tell me, how many books do you have on your physical TBR? Are you someone who likes having a really big physical TBR with lots of books to read? Or are you like me and you like having a small manageable number? Or do you like having no physical TBR? Let me know. Alright, thanks for watching and enjoy the journey. Bye. I just want to know if like anyone's favorite part of filming is like putting books back on your shelf after you film. Like, it's strangely satisfying.